The subject that I'm going to talk about is probably going to affect 60% of you when you graduate from this university. So what am I talking about? Youth unemployment. And in particular, youth who have graduated from universities, and the percentage of about 60% are basically youth who graduate from universities within their field, most of them having decent, good grades, that they enter the job market, and on average it will take about 2 years, minimum of 2 years, for the other 40% to find an employment which is in line with what they have studied. So a little bit of background about myself. As I said, I'm Ethiopian, but I grew up in a number of countries. In Africa, Kenya, Uganda. I did my master's in Denmark, and I have a background in my field of political science, refugee studies, and I've also worked in the private sector in a number of areas in Ethiopia. When I was preparing for this speech, a lot of people were telling me that I have to start with a story, something personal that can draw in the audience. Now, as a typical Ethiopian, we're very, we're not that open when we're meeting new people. So the examples that I was using was mostly from my friends who have experience in unemployment, from my family members who are in the universities who could not find a job. And I didn't really want to use my own experience, because I thought that's my own experience, no one needs to know. But I want to share that story because I think it would help you understand. I'm not talking about the students who are going to graduate, but other people, politicians, academics. It will help you understand the struggles we go through when we graduate from universities. When I was in Denmark, as I told you before, I did global refugee studies, got a good grade, and I heard about migration being a major issue in Ethiopia. I was touched by the issue of domestic workers in the Middle East, but also other migrants in the Middle East who were forced to repatriate back to Ethiopia and the hardship they're going through. And I had my migration studies in one of the top universities in Europe. I did my case study in Ethiopian migration. So when I came here, I saw a lot of job opportunities within that field. And I continued to apply, but I could not get any job interviews. I could not get any positive feedback. And when I tried to delve into it, I realized that it wasn't so much because I don't have the educational skill. It was because there tended to be a mismatch. So what do I mean by mismatch? The mismatch occurs when you finish your educational system and you enter the job market. The demand of the job market, what it demands of you within your field, and what the education you got from university, they do not match. And this is actually based on a number of factors. So let me just delve into it. Within this discussion we're talking about, I focus on African youth, poverty, and migration. And the reason why I focus on it is we need to contextualize the situation in Africa regarding the youth, right, and the unemployment. So as I discussed before, it's stated by the African Center of Economic Transformation. That's the 60% I was telling you about graduates who don't find employment, right? So when I looked at African youth poverty and migration within the IPSS, I realized that there is a linkage, right? The African youth who doesn't find employment enters into the cycle of poverty, right? And when he enters the cycle of poverty, that's why I'm going to connect with security, because this is the discussion about securitization. When he enters or she enters the cycle of poverty because they cannot find employment, there are two choices that's left to them. Either they use migration to get out of the country, find better opportunities, many ending up in the hands of human traffickers and untold atrocities, I'm sure most of you know, especially Ethiopians. Others end up in criminal activities to make ends meet. Others are owned by terrorist organizations, including Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram. they feast into the youth who are unemployed because they understand an unemployed youth is desperate, not just for money and livelihood, is desperate for acceptance. And this is actually supported by a recent ILO report in 2015 that actually found out that unemployment, youth unemployment, not only creates poverty, but also is a contributing factor to social breakdown, to social cohesion, and also is more likely that unemployed youth has a higher chance of being manipulated by terrorist organizations and anti-peace forces. So, I've talked about the problem, right? And it's a very complex problem. It's a problem, unfortunately, many of you will face once you graduate. So what is the solution? Now, there isn't any solution, I can tell you, anyone can tell you, that can guarantee you once you finish your education, you will find a job. There's no system in the world, let alone in Ethiopia or Africa. Now, this youth unemployment affects all youth throughout Africa. Youth unemployment is directly linked to creating insecurity throughout the African continent. Every government knows this in Africa, from South Africa to Egypt, from Ethiopia and Nigeria. The facts are there. But what are the solutions? One solution, and there could be many. The one solution is youth unemployment insurance. Now, I don't know if people here read English newspaper daily, but I did actually talk about this issue in a number of Ethiopian news agencies, the newspapers, the Reporter, Fortune, what I'm going to discuss right now. Youth unemployment insurance is a complex mechanism that tries to deal with the mismatch I talked about, right? The mismatch between when the youth graduates from university and finding employment. That mismatch I'm talking about is making sure that the youth is attractive to the labor market once they graduate from university. So what do I mean by attractive? Well, for example, what youth employment insurance does is it looks at who are the actors within the labor market throughout the world, especially in Africa. So you have the government, right? You have the private sector. Right? Those are the two main actors in the labor market. Either you get hired by the private or by the public. Now, those are not only the two actors. Behind the scene also, especially in African context, there's international development partners, which is a fancy way of saying donors. So the donors could be state-based, more developed nations, or even China. Now we're seeing more of development being spread out than just Western countries, but usually donors tend to be Western countries. It could be international organizations, World Bank, WTO. So within the African context, so we have the government, the private sector, international donors, but we also have, or we need to have the youth. Because even though the youth is unemployed, they do still have the mechanism in place that they can contribute to setting up a structure where they can help them be employed. Actually, they are the most significant element within this mechanism. So what youth unemployment insurance does, it takes in all these different actors and puts them in one centralized committee with each actor, meaning the government, the private sector, the academic institution, all of them voting in a representative within a mechanized, within a centralized system. So, how does it work? Sounds fancy, sounds a little bit complex, but how does it work? Basically, the way I described it, all the different parties have interest vested in the youth being employed. The government wants a youth to be employed because it doesn't want to deal with unemployment that comes into insecurity, as I discussed before. The private sector wants to employ the youth, but they just don't have, the youth they want to employ just don't have the competence or the right level of training that are in demand in the private sector. The educational institutions want to help out, but they don't know how. youth unemployment insurance creates that mechanism for all of them to contribute. For example, the way it works is each African state will push the educational systems, educational universities, higher education, to help the Ministry of Labor come up with a trajectory of how the labor market is within one nation. Let's say, for example, I don't want to be biased, I don't want to choose Ethiopia. So let's say, for example, Rwanda, right? So for example, the Rwandese government would push the higher education systems to help the Ministry of Labor come up with a trajectory of the labor market. So which section of the labor market within 10 years is in demand in Rwanda, right? Which section of the labor market needs, for example, if the IT sector in Rwanda wants IT students not just to learn programming, but to focus on app development, such an information or database has to be put in place. Now, once such a system is put in place, basically what unemployment insurance union is think of it this way, it's a recycling element of training youth who graduate from universities. So for example, one of you graduates in, let's say, IT, right? Goes into the labor market, cannot find a job, can actually come into this labor union, unemployment insurance, youth unemployment insurance, and they can get the efficient time of training they need. Now, usually such a training, depending on each country's economic development, but ought to last between 3 to 6 months. Now, this all sounds fancy and it all sounds like, yeah, is it practical? It is. Because it's been done before and it has actually shown results. Not in Africa, I do admit, but while I was studying in Denmark, while I visited Sweden, Norway, but also developing countries like Philippines, they do have such a system already in place. For example, in Scandinavia, one of the reasons why they have one of the lowest unemployment, or why the youth unemployment rate in Scandinavia is about 3 to 4%, is mainly because of such a system. So how does it work? Well, the government will build up job centers throughout the area, within sub-districts of each city, and will contribute financially to trainers and experts. The donors will help the government in such a way because they also have vested interest. They don't want migrants, illegal migrants as they're so called, but regardless, migrants coming to the Western world. So it is in their interest to help the governments in Africa. And the youth will all have that safety net always to be trained and retrained so to be attracted to the labor market. And the private sector will also contribute because they want competent workforce. So by creating unemployment insurance throughout Africa, in line with the realities of each state, we can actually be serious in tackling unemployment of graduates from universities who should have been, while Africa is rising, should have been benefiting, but they're not. Is youth unemployment insurance perfect? Far from it. But it is a start. And it's expected, not just from academics or politicians, but it's expected from you, students yourself. Because once you graduate and you enter, if such a system is in place, that you will also contribute in making sure that the system will work for you. Thank you.